Hey there, guys. Welcome to Lesson 2. This is Module 3, and today we are doing some more fractions. We're talking about making equivalent fractions using sums of fractions with like denominators. And what we'll be doing is drawing some number lines and then writing some equations and just taking a look at how that all equates to equivalent fractions, okay? So we're going to start out with drawing number lines, and this is something that you guys are going to need to get really, really good at. And just any line is fine, even if it's curved and not straight like mine. And what I want you to do is to begin with thinking about beginning and end points, okay? And it kind of all depends on what you're doing. The first one I want to do is just labeling with 0 and 1, so showing one hole, okay? All I need to show is one hole on this one. And I want you to label things, we're going to label things as thirds, all right? So if I want to do thirds, I want to split this whole into a third. I need to dissect this down into 3 pieces. If I want to turn this into 3 pieces, I need to draw 2 lines. 1, 2, and you'll see I just made 1, 2, 3 pieces, okay? On this number line, what I want to end up showing is I want to show 1/3 plus 1/3. Easy enough, right? So in this number line here, I have 0 and 1. And this right here, this would be 1/3, okay? So if I'm going to do that, I would take, okay, there's 1/3. And I'm going to add on another third. This would be 2/3 here. I'm going to add on another third, right? And I'm going to end up at 2/3. So 1/3 plus another 1/3 would equal 2/3. I can also put this, so this is my addition sentence. I'm using addition here, right? I can also use multiplication to show this sentence. My multiplication sentence, how could I do this? Well, if I'm looking at this, I see that I have 2 groups of 1/3, right? I'm taking one group of 1/3, adding it to another group of 1/3. So I have 2 groups of 1/3 also equals 2/3. So what I've just done is now I have 2 different ways. I have equivalent ways, or equivalent ways to show 2/3, right? I have 1/3 plus 1/3. I have 2/3, or I have 2 times 1/3. Make sense? Okay. So let's make another number line. Okay, and on this problem, we're going to have our starting and end point. And once again, we'll do 0, and we'll do 1. And we're going to split this guy up into eighths, all right? If I'm going to do this into eighths, I need to have 7 lines. I also know that eighths I can split that half, and I can get quarters, fourths, and if I split those in half, I'll have eighths. So let's count the lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 7 lines. I have 1 section, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 8 sections. So I definitely have my eighths there. What I want to do is I want to show. Let's label. So what I want to show. I want to show 7/8 is where I want to get to. So let's find 7/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7/8 here at this point. What are 2 numbers, or maybe 3 numbers, that I could add together to get to 7? Well, 7, I could do 3 plus 3, that would be 6, right? 6 plus 1 would be 7. And so I would do 3/8 plus 3/8 plus 1/8. I could do that. Let's do it on the number lines. Check this out. So I have 3/8 here. So I would take my 3/8 and I would add my other 3/8 here. I would go 1, 2, 3. I would add that other 3/8, and then I would add my final 1/8 to get 7/8. Sorry, this would be 6/8 here, right? And I would do my final one to get 7/8. And that's awesome. That is definitely 7/8 is equal to 3/8 plus 3/8 plus 1/8. And if I thought about that in terms of a multiplication sentence that I could do, well, I'm looking at this and I see I have two groups of this. And I know if I'm doing groups of, that is definitely multiplication. I'm going to have two groups of 3/8. Two groups of 3/8. And I want to add, so I want to do that first. So I put my parentheses around there. I want to add that to 1/8. And that would also be equivalent. So now I have my fraction, I have an equivalent addition equation, and I have an equivalent multiplication equation, all for 7/8, right? Okay. Now this next one we're going to do a little bit differently. We're still going to draw our number line out, but we're gonna end up wanting to show 6 halves, and so we're going to have our beginning point will be 0, and our end point will be 6 halves, okay? And so what I'm going to need to do then is I'm going to make six parts, or 6 equal parts going in here. So I have 6 halves, right? So if I'm doing 6, I would draw 5 lines. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We're just estimating. They don't have to be exact. And so this would be 0 halves here. And I wanted to get up to 6. So that's why I drew 5 lines. That's why I did that. I have 6 pieces, okay? And so then this would be 1 half. This would be 2 halves. This would be 3 halves. And this would be 4 halves. And this would be 5 halves. Now, what I want to do, what I want to show is I want to show an addition sentence that could get me there. And if I do something like, let's do 2 halves plus 2 halves plus 2 halves. Let's show that. So that would equal this, right? 2, 4, and 6 halves. That would give me 6 halves. So let's do that. Let's go 2 halves plus 2 halves is 4 halves plus 6 halves would get me to 6 halves. And now, if I'm doing that, I know that 2 halves, that's 1. Right? And that's another half, and that would get me 2 here. And another half, another whole, that would put me at 3. So 6 halves, well, that's really 3, isn't it? And so I can put my whole number down there. What's another way I could do this? 2 halves plus 2 halves plus 2 halves. So I could have 2 halves times what? Times 3, right? That would give me 6 halves. So 2 halves times 3 would also be another way that I could write this out. Okay, so let's scrap this one. Let's go to our next problem. Once again, number line. This is going to show whatever we want it to show. And this time we want it to show something a little bit different. This time I want it to show 8/5, all right? And so you know that you're always just going to start with a 0. You don't even need to worry about that. And if we're doing 8/5, we're doing fifths, right? So let's go here. If this is our next one, if this is my next whole, this here would be 5/5, right? And that would be 1. So then if I make another tick here, well, that would be, if I make this 2, if this is 1, then this would be 2. And 2 of these, that would be 10/5, right? And so then I can go back, I can fill in this. So I'm gonna, if I want to do 5s, or 5ths, I'm gonna draw 4 lines. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And once again here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so now I have 5/5 and I have 10/5. And I could show 8/5. So let's find out. I have 5/5 here. I have 6, 7. I have 8/5 right here. Excellent. And so I have my 8/5. So now let's try this out. What is one way that I could say 8/5 by adding 2 fractions together? It would be a fraction plus a fraction equals 8/5. Well, if I'm looking at this, I could do something like 5/5, right? 5/5. Let's start there. I have that number already located. Boom, I have 5/5. So let's do 5/5 plus what to get me to 8/5? Well, that would be another 1/5, another 2/5, another 3/5 would get me to there, right? And I would see that 3/5, and that would equal my 8/5, right? Okay, awesome. Now, what I want to do now is I want to take a look at these whole numbers up here that I have. I have 1 and I have 2. Another way for me to say all of this business, because this 5/5, that's 1, is I could put that 1 down. And then we said here I had that 1 and I added a 3/5 to get to that 8/5 point. So I could take my 1 and I could write that as 1 and 3/5. And that would be equivalent to this, which would also be equivalent to 8/5. Do you see how that works? I have my 1 plus I'm adding another 3/5. I have my 1 plus I'm adding another 1, 2, 3/5 to get a total of 8/5, or 1 and 3/5. Now those answers are also equivalent. All right. Okay. Let's try one more. Nice number line, starting at 0. This number line I want you to show, or I'm going to show 7/3. Okay. And if I'm doing 7/3. And I want to do this, I'm going to have, well, this would be, this right here, that would be 1, that would be 3/3. My next tick would be 6/3. So I got to go up 1 more because it's not quite 7/3, is it? So I have 3, I have 6/3. My next one would be 9/3. And I know that because this would be 1, that's one of them. And 2, well, 3 times 2 is 6, right? And then I'm going to have, my next one would be 3, right? And 3 times 3 is 9. And so I'm still dealing with thirds, so that's why my denominator always stays the same. But now I have this. If I went on further as 3, 6, 9, I would be 12, right? Anyways, so these are thirds. So now I can go and I can fill back in the ones in between. I can go 1, 2. Just do 2 lines to get thirds. And there we go. So now I said I wanted to get 7/3, and so let's find out. Let's find out where the 7/3 is. I see 6/3 here, and I know if I just add 1 more onto that 6/3, I will have myself 7/3. So for this time, let's go ahead and let's show 7/3 as 2 units of 3/3. Okay, so 2 units of 3/3. Okay, let's do that first. Let's go. Here's 1 3/3. Here's 2 3/3, and that takes me all the way up to 6/3. And if I want to get here, I just need to add in 1 more third, so 1 more third, and that would equal my 7/3. So now taking a look at this then, and I've given myself a multiplication sentence. What I want to do now is I want to transfer that over into whole numbers. And so I'm taking a look at this and I'm seeing that I have 1, yep, that's 1. And this here is 2, and I had to add on an extra 1/3. And if you can look at that, you can say, well, this is really 1, and 2 times 1 is 2, plus a third. So I have 2. Whoa, don't plus it. Excuse me, don't add. I have 2 and 1/3, and this is equivalent to this, and this is equivalent to this. Okay, so. Several things that we've done in this lesson, and several things that you need to look for and think about is one is getting the number line correct, and sometimes that's just putting it into the right scale. If you have like this one, we had 7/3, and so I started off by just doing 1, and 1 would have been 3/3, right? I started off by doing 1, and I got that, and then I said, well, 2 would be 6/3, and I got that. I realized that 6/3 wasn't quite, it was not 7/3, obviously it was too small. So I needed to go ahead and add an extra whole so that I could scale this out. So I had 9/3. And then I realized that I could get to my 7/3 by doing it that way. We've also taken a look at things like, come on, go back, excuse me. Multiplying, I realized I had 2 groups of thirds, 3/3, so I can write that as a multiplication sentence, and then I had to add on my extra 1/3. And finally, we took a look at the whole numbers on top and realized that that was also an equivalent way to write the same fraction, so that I could do that as 2 and an extra 1/3 to get my total of 7/3. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and post any comments that you have or questions, and keep rocking out. You guys are doing a great job.